This is a 2005 Acura NSX, and it's an absolute automotive icon. The very last year of an automotive icon, in fact, the original NSX, which was sold from 1991 all the way through 2005. Today, I'm going to review this NSX and show you all of its iconic quirks and features. Before I get started, big news, this Acura NSX is currently for sale and it's being auctioned live on Cars and Bids. This is a final year NSX with a manual transmission. It's been in the same family for 15 years and it's mostly unmodified, which is getting pretty hard to find with these. And you can buy it on Cars and Bids. So once you finish watching this video, click the link in the description below to head over to the live auction for this NSX, where you can bid on it and buy it only on Cars and Bids. All right, I'm going to start the quirks and features of the NSX with a little history of this car because frankly, it's pretty interesting. So Acura comes out in the mid-late 1980s as Honda's new premium luxury brand. And within a few years, they debut an exotic mid-engine sports car. It was a total surprise from a brand that a lot of people still hadn't heard of, now trying to compete in the exotic car world. But that's exactly why Acura wanted the NSX. They wanted to show luxury car buyers that this new brand from Japan was world-class and capable of competing with storied Europeans like BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and even Ferrari. And indeed, when the NSX first came out, its closest rival was the Ferrari 348. Honda developed this car and gave it the NSX name for New Sports Experimental. The goal was to compete with Italian exotic supercars, unreliable V8s, with a reliable, serviceable mid-engine Japanese supercar. And that was this. Now, over the years, the NSX has developed a reputation for its perfect analog driving experience and beautiful balance and road feel, but at the time, it was tremendously controversial. The Japanese trying to take on the Italian exotic cars. There were Japanese sports cars, but at a lower tier. This is the only one that went straight to Ferrari, and it was a big deal. So let's talk NSX Basics. This car came out for the 1991 model year, and back then it used a 3-liter V6 with 270 horsepower. This design would continue through 2005, 15 years of the original NSX, and this is an 05 model, one of the very last ones made. But as you can imagine, there were changes over the years. Originally, the NSX was a coupe, but later they offered it as a T-top with a removable roof so you could drive around with the wind in your hair. The engine also grew from a 3-liter to a 3.2-liter V6 and from 270 to 290 horsepower, which is what this car has. But probably the most notable change to the original NSX came in 2002 when Honda did a number of upgrades to this car, most obviously at the front end. You can see fixed headlights here, which replaced the pop-up headlights of the NSX that was made throughout the 1990s. Now, although all original NSX models are beloved by enthusiasts, it's these later versions, the 02 to 05 models, that are particularly sought after. They were made in tremendously small numbers because by then this car had been on sale for years and sales had slowed to a trickle. And they had a bunch of upgrades, the fixed headlights, but several others throughout the car, which I'll show you in this video. These later NSXs are the rarest and the most desirable of all the original NSX models. But anyway, next up, onto the NSX quirks and features. There are many, starting with the key fob, which is detached from the key. By 2005, most cars had the key and the fob as one unit, but not the NSX. It was old school, and the fob itself is kind of interesting. You got 3 buttons up top. The big one is lock. The small one is unlock, and then the third is blank. So lock and unlock, not the same sizes, and that third blank one just does nothing. I assume that's where the trunk opener would have been on a normal Honda, but this isn't a normal Honda. You also had a panic button at the bottom of the remote. They could have put that where the blank was, but they didn't. Anyway, opening up the door is an interesting process because the door handle is here, kind of at the base of the window in the corner. They didn't want to stick a door handle on the door itself and make this car uglier, so they sort of integrated it into the window line and kind of hid the door handle a little, which is a cool idea, and it worked pretty well. You'll also notice it says NSX right next to the door handle, just a reminder of what you're about to climb inside. But anyway, getting inside, the door panel itself is a little bit unusual. There is no storage on this door panel. No little storage compartment for a wallet, paperwork, anything like that. You don't get it. Instead, you have climate vents. 2 climate vents mounted on the door panel, which is very unusual. Instead of on the dashboard, they're mounted on the door. I guess trying to make this interior a little bit smaller, that's where the climate vents ended up. Same deal on the passenger side. Not on the dashboard, they are mounted on the door itself, which is a very unusual quirk you don't often see. And another interesting quirk, on the driver's door panel, you have this switch which says on and main. This is the window lockout switch. So in your family SUV, you can lock out your kids from rolling up and down the back windows all the time. Well, they have that in this car too, even though the only windows that roll down are driver and passenger. You can just tell your passenger to stop rolling down the window, but no, there is a switch for it. On means that both windows are on. Main means that just the main window, that's the driver's window, can roll down. Odd to see a window lockout on a 2-seater, but that's the situation here. Anyway, moving on from the door panel into the rest of this interior, getting inside doesn't really feel like a supercar in here. Instead, it feels like an Acura. Now, it's lower and more special than like an MDX, but it's also not that radical or crazy like you might expect from an exotic car. Certainly doesn't look like a Countach or an Enzo in here. It looks like what would happen if Acura made a sports car. Stuff is very functional, very reasonable. It's laid out where you'd expect it to be, using similar materials to other Acura models. The Japanese didn't go too crazy with interiors like the Italians did, and that's reflected in this car. Even though it was Honda's exotic sports car, it wasn't that exotic inside. It was mostly Japanese exotic. But there were still some unusual and quirky details in here, most notably on the steering column. The turn signal stalk is not mounted to the steering column. Instead, it's mounted to this panel that comes off the steering column that contains your defroster and your headlight switch, which is a little unusual. And same deal on the passenger side. The wiper stalk not mounted to the steering column, but another one of these fixed panels coming off the steering column. This one has your cruise control and your hazard lights. It was an interesting way of, well, doing this, although a lot of Japanese cars in the 90s had it, including this NSX. Now, speaking of unusual controls in here, moving to the center and the climate controls, I love the little NSXs printed on the air circulating buttons. These are very cool, cute little attention to detail. They don't really look like the NSX, but it's the thought that counts, and it looks mostly like it. You'll also find a little miniature representation of the NSX in here in the gauge cluster. This image shows the car from above, and it displays if you have doors open or other compartments, the storage area, the engine, that sort of thing. Just a little mini representation of an NSX, and frankly, a pretty accurate one. Next up, another funny quirk in this car is the cup holders. When the NSX first came out back in 1991, cup holders weren't really a thing. Some cars had them, but most didn't, and nobody really cared if you had them or not. But by 2005, it was pretty standard. If you didn't have cup holders, it was weird. So at some point, Acura added them in right here. The center console lid lifts up and reveals the cup holders, which are the flimsiest, most pathetic looking afterthought cup holders I have ever seen in my life. And of course, the center console lid would just close on them if you had a drink in there. But there are cup holders in the NSX that allowed Acura to tell people, yes, we do have cup holders. Next up, another interesting touch in this car is the plaque that you see when you open up the doors. Right here in the door sill, you can see it says NSX, and it also shows the last 8 digits of the VIN. Now, the first number here is the code for the model year, in this case 5 for 2005, and then it basically basically shows what serial number your NSX was. And all of the NSXs had these individual numbered by year little plates in them to let you know just how special you were. Interestingly, nothing inside the car really makes that clear. It doesn't say NSX anywhere in here except on the floor mats, which of course are removable. No NSX on the dashboard, no special plaques or printing in the seats. You only had that little plaque in the door sill, which you couldn't even see when the car was moving, to remind you of your specialness. Again, this was sort of the anti-Italian supercar where everything was low numbered and low volume. This was an Acura that you could get in and drive and have fun with instead of some super low production special series. And another notable feature in this NSX, the roof comes off, and actually pretty easily. You can see there's a little latch and a switch on one side of the roof. You pull the latch, push the switch, and then that side is unlocked. You do the same thing over on the other side, and you've just pulled off the roof. Your Targa top is gone, and now you can enjoy the wind in your hair driving an open-roofed NSX. Like I mentioned earlier, the original NSX models were fixed-roof coupes only. Later, they started offering the T-top, and that became an overwhelming majority of sales. By 2005, all NSXs had the open roof. There were no more fixed coupes. Now, a couple of other interesting things worth mentioning in here that only relate to these late production, final year NSX models. One is the blue gauges. They switched to blue with the 2002 facelift, and that changed things. It's only on these last production cars. You also had this gear lever, which may not look like much, but it was different from the ones in earlier NSXs, and that was only on the very, very latest late production NSXs, this special gear lever for the manual transmission. Now, it's worth pointing out transmissions. This car has a 6-speed manual, as you can see, but it was also offered with a 4-speed automatic if you wanted to. Of course, most people chose the manual, and those are the ones that are worth far more today. Now, the next interesting thing about this NSX is getting into all of the compartments. The exterior compartments, there are 3, and they're a little quirky. We'll start up front. Now, getting in here is pretty normal. There's a latch in the driver's footwell, a hood latch, just like in basically every car. You pull it, and then it pops open. You open up this compartment, and you discover, well, it's not storage, and it's not an engine. You have the spare tire up here and some other mechanical components, but this front compartment isn't what most people expect. You'd think you'd have a storage area there like most mid-engine cars, but that's not the case here. So you might be thinking, where is the cargo area? And for that, we go to compartment number 2. You access it by pushing this button on the driver's door panel. You can see kind of a trunk button. Push that, and then this rear compartment opens up. It's pretty big. There's a lot of storage in this car, surprising amount. It's not huge, of course, but for a mid-engine exotic car, it's pretty sizable. And again, that was part of the point of this car, to make a more practical Japanese exotic car, and that included more trunk space. But now you're probably thinking, we've seen the front, we've seen the back, where's the engine in this car? Well, that would be behind door number 3. Now, to access the engine compartment, you go next to the driver's seat. There's this little latch that you can twist. You can see it has an image of an NSX with a rear compartment opened up on it. It's a very cute image, reminiscent of those climate controls. Anyway, you twist that, and that unlocks this rear compartment. You come back and stick your hand in the center and lift up the glass. But as you can see, you're not done yet. There's a cover between the glass and the engine itself. You lift up that also, and then there's a prop to hold it in place, and then you're into the engine compartment. Now, like I mentioned, these early NSXs had a 3-liter V6, about 270 horsepower. It bumped to a 3.2-liter V6 with 290 horsepower, which is what this car has. Not a V8 like the Italians, which was a controversial decision that's been discussed for decades, but where it lacked in torque and engine size and sound, it made up for in reliability and smoothness. At least that was the theory. We'll see how it feels when I get this car out on the road. Now, the result of this engine compartment back here is that there are 2 separate rear compartments in this car with 2 separate opening pieces, the trunk and the engine bay, as you can see, which is an unusual design decision. A lot of cars that have a mid-engine and a trunk, it opens in one big piece, but not here. 2 separate, one for the engine and one for the storage area. Maybe the quirkiest thing is there's actually a third piece back here that opens up. It's the cover of the engine compartment. There's this little latch on the side of this cover, as you can see. Pull it, and then the cover opens up, revealing it's kind of a clamshell with an empty space in the middle. That's where the roof is supposed to go when you take it off. So pull off the roof, stick it inside this compartment within a compartment, and then you can drive around roofless, but have your roof with you if it rains. And then there's the look of the original NSX, the design, the style. I always felt this car looked good and it looked aggressive, but it wasn't drop-dead gorgeous or crazy head-turning. It had the exotic car mid-engine low-slung look down, but without the flair and craziness of Italian cars. It was indeed Japan's take on the mid-engine exotic sports car with Japanese subdued design. Again, it looked cool, looked awesome in fact, but it just didn't have that gravitas, that ridiculous out there look that you got from Ferraris of this day. And frankly, that was especially true by 2005. At that point, this car had a pretty familiar shape. It had been out for 15 years and looked largely the same, whereas Ferrari and Lamborghini kept redesigning, changing, upgrading. So by 05, this car was starting to look, dare I say, a little old. Now, I also want to point out the other changes made to the 02 to 05 NSX models that have helped give them this allure as the best of the breed, the last of the NSXs. I mentioned the fixed headlights before, and not just that, there's xenon headlights, which was an upgrade and of course allowed you to see better. The 02 to 05 NSX models also got an updated rear end design. The taillights were new and a little different. You had circle turn signals. That's the easiest way to tell it apart from the back, but the rear end in general was a little different than earlier cars. You also had wider rear tires, which meant more grip, but it also helped accommodate a new upgraded suspension system that a lot of people feel gives this car an edge in terms of handling. And you had new wheels on these NSXs, a different design, and they're 17-inch wheels, which doesn't sound very large until you realize that the original NSX had 15-inch wheels up front. So by comparison, these 17s were pretty big. Now that rounds out the major changes to the later 02 to 05 NSX models, but really all of these original NSXs are revered and beloved by enthusiasts. In fact, Gordon Murray, the designer of the McLaren F1, loved this car so much in the early 90s that he asked and then begged Honda to make him an engine for his McLaren F1. Honda turned him down, so he went to BMW instead, but it was his experience with the NSX that convinced him that Honda could make a perfectly balanced, lightweight, wonderful sports car engine, and if he had had his way, it would have been a Honda power plant in the F1, thanks to the NSX. All right, driving the NSX, the original NSX. Well, it's kind of funny to say that since it first came out in 91, this is an 05, but it is still an NA NSX, that's what they call it. NA1 with the original engine, NA2 with this later larger engine. It's still a first generation NSX. Now, I've already reviewed 2 NSXs from this era on my channel. The first was one of these, 02 to 05, but it was years ago, way before my current format. And the other was more recently. It was a right-hand drive early NSX, a Japanese market right-hand drive car. So it's a very different car. So I was happy I had the chance to review this one. Now, this is a particularly special NSX. Not only has it been 15 years in the same family, but it has 129,000 miles, which is just incredible. And the amazing thing is how well it's held up. I can't even explain to you how a Ferrari 348 would look after that many miles. It'd be tired, it'd be worn, it wouldn't feel that fast. Suspension components, interior components, it would just be falling apart, honestly. I've driven those cars with 50,000 miles and they're starting to look a little rough around the edges. At 130, it would be just crazy. You'd be on a second engine. This car, it looks like any other Japanese car with 130,000 miles. The seats are a little worn, the carpets are worn, and that's it. And I have an enormous amount of confidence driving this car, even at this mileage level, because it's a Honda. That was what they were going for, a supercar that you could actually use, not just on an occasion, but when you wanted to go and have fun in a supercar. And that's exactly what they created. Now, the controversy here is calling it a supercar. This is a V6. It had 290 horsepower. Was it really a supercar? I don't know. From a pricing standpoint at the time, it was pretty close. It was up there with the Ferraris and the Porsche 911 turbos and that kind of thing. But V6 with 290 horse. It doesn't matter though in the end, because no supercar from that era, no exotic car is fast by modern standards, but this one is amazing by modern standards. It feels so good to drive. And this is something that hits me regardless of what NSX I'm driving, regardless of when it is. Right-hand drive, left-hand drive, new, old, years ago or today, it still feels so good. The engine is not a tremendously powerful V8 or V12, but it is smooth, 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 and it feels so nice. And rev matching is so easy because it's eager to rev, and you feel no guilt about running it out. Now, yes, it's not a V8 that sounds amazing, but it's still a fantastic engine. It really is. It delivers all the power you need, plus a little extra, not crazy, but right at the number where I feel that cars start to feel really, really fun. Then you have the steering and handling. This car drives like an absolute dream. Even after 130,000 miles, it is still tremendously stable through corners. This chassis was just perfect. It was always flat. It was perfectly balanced. It just always felt great. And the steering is so communicative. It's not as precise as modern exotic cars, but it's still damn close. And it just gets you so there. It gives you so much good feedback. Oh, it never feels too light. It never feels too vague. Even at low speeds, even at high speeds, it's just perfectly balanced and perfectly done. You know, it's funny because when this car came out, it was a rival to the 348 and it was cheaper. It was the Japanese cheaper alternative to an Italian exotic. Now, these 02 to 05 ones especially, but nice early ones too, are more expensive than a 348 and deservedly so. I actually like the 348. I think it gets a bad rap and I think it deserves more positive praise than it gets, but this car was so much better to drive. The pedals were so easy, rev matching, the shifter feels so good slotting it into gear. The NSX is one of the few cars I have basically nothing bad to say about the driving experience. Yes, it could be faster. Like, I like a fast car. My Ford GT's got twice as much power as this has. But it was a balance thing with this car, and it executed perfectly on that balance. This car doesn't feel slow, it doesn't feel crazy fast, but that wasn't the point. It wasn't an explosive car, it was a balanced car. Maybe better than any other balanced car in the history of balanced cars. And it's reliable, which is so cool. Like that, what a nice added bonus that one of the great driver's cars of all time also isn't a pain to own. If this car was unreliable, I would still love it because it drives amazingly. But the fact that it's reliable just brings it into that next realm. Is it an exotic car? No, I actually don't think so. I turn my head when I see an NSX, but I don't freak out. If I saw a 348, I'd be like, whoa, I never see those. This car isn't as special, but when you're sitting in this seat, it is. And that's the greatest thing about it. If you don't want the ego trip of driving a Ferrari, but you just want the greatest driver's car, you found it. And so that's the original Acura NSX. I love this car. I've always loved driving the NSX. It is so perfectly balanced, fantastic, wonderful, amazing analog performance car. And you can buy this one on Cars and Bids. Anyway, now it's time to give this NSX a DougScore. And the DougScore is here, 57 out of 100, which places the NSX here, rightfully at the top of this list of Japanese sports cars from this era, tied only with the Mark IV Toyota Supra, which has also become iconic and extremely desired. The final iteration of the Acura NSX was a truly special car, and when it went away, the sports car world lost something amazing. This was another important player in the mid-2000s, which I really think was the golden era of the modern sports car.